1 2 check check 1 2 1 2 1 2. I believe I am live. Let me just see what's going on here now. Ah, looks like I am live. Okie dokie. Apologize for the background noise here, folks. I've got another temp setup again. Anyone I haven't spoken to, I'm back in Europe. I'm just in Spain at the moment. And just back from the States about a week. Where is my... I need to confirm that I'm actually live here before we get going with anything. Nothing serious as usual. I very rarely live stream. When I do, I just kind of dick around, messing around with some equipment here. So I've got a couple of laptops. I've got a laptop there, laptop down here, and I'm just playing around. Just turn the volume down on this. My live. Oh, I can see myself. Great, I am live. So I'm going out live on X and YouTube. Just playing around with vMix here. So top of the range software, but a couple of laptops. I'm just kind of cobbling together a little setup. And we'll see if I get any viewers now as well. Oh, there we go. I can see myself on X. Just making sure I'm coming through okay. I'm right beside a busy street, so the audio probably isn't great. You can see I'm coming through at 50% on the meter. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Yeah. And I can't hear myself, which is always a pain in the arse. I'm stuttering on X. It's starting to freeze a little bit. Does that actually? You know what? I've got 3 phones here, and they're all connected to the internet. I'm going to turn all them off before I get going. Might help things. Oh yeah, X looks pretty stable. Just watching on the second laptop. Anyone watching, send me something in the comments. Anything. Send me nudes. Send me a hello, something. Just kind of riff about a couple of things. Really, there's only one thing I want to get off my chest. That's the whole election aftermath in Ireland, you know. Anyone who doesn't know, there was a general election in Ireland on the 29th of November. And that's kind of, you know, mostly what people are talking about, I suppose. The most significant thing where Ireland is concerned. Oh, nice. Thank you very much, Kieran Mack. And what's that one? End of the line, Joel. Thank you. Thanks for the suggestions. Yeah, how's my audio? Sounding good, yeah? I can't hear myself with this setup. I'm deaf because I got these in, but I don't know why I'm even wearing them. Nice, thanks, Vanilla. All good. You know, I don't even use YouTube nowadays, to be honest. I used to be obsessed. I used to be like, it's all about YouTube. Now I'm hooked on X. I'm on X all day. I can't help it. I'm listening to X Spaces in the fucking shower. I'm listening to it when I'm going for a walk. I'm on the phone all day long. Nice, thanks for that. Well, it should be good audio. This is a deadly mic. This mic here, I've had this mic here since 2018. It's the Rode Procaster. Deadly mic. These, you can actually get these like, these are like, you could kill someone with one of those yokes. They're really solid. They're probably like a 200 quid new, but you can get them for €50 nowadays. It's a dynamic microphone, XLR connection, really good quality, and a little pop shield on there as well. But yeah, should be good audio. I'm using vMix, so of all the gear except a limited laptop, and I'm using Wi-Fi as well. Yeah, but like I was saying, I'm hooked on X nowadays. I use it for everything and promoting stuff, and I don't really use YouTube that much. I've been sitting at just over 4,000 subscribers for ages. And when I got back on the horse late last year, it was when I was in Malta, I started to make some videos and stuff like that. And I was breaking my arse making these really good videos. And I think I only jumped up about, well, I think I jumped up about 700 subscribers. That was because I made a video about Coolock for any of the Irish viewers. Sure you remember that? Like all the protests and stuff at Coolock. And I put together a really reasonably well produced video, about 40 minutes long. Pimped that out, sent it to loads and loads of people. And I ended up getting like 900 subscribers. Now, I don't care about status or being popular or subscribers. I only care about, like, getting information out there and being truthful. So that's the whole point of it all. But but besides that, I haven't done much with YouTube at all, really. I've just been letting it sit there. I put up a few interviews I did recently talking about the book and Marxism and all that crack. And I put up that recent presentation I did at the University of Dallas. But, I mean, that got like 400 views. And I put the exact same video up on X, promoted the Jesus out of it. And it was at like 20,000 views. You know what I mean? So there's no contest. I uploaded another one recently, the edited version. It's only 55 minutes long. And that's up over like 30,000. So as far as I'm concerned, X is kicking the crap out of YouTube. But I'm sure people have said to me that it's been shadow banned and all that crack. X is a little bit more free speechy, I suppose, and YouTube is a bit more controlled. And obviously, because of the content I do and stuff I talk about, it's reasonable to assume that I'm being censored. It just takes one nut job to report what I'm saying or whatever, or send someone an email, or maybe I'm just not being noticed or getting traction. Who knows? But I don't really mind. But yeah, Mr. Waters. Yeah, people ask me about that sometime, getting John Waters on again. I don't think John doesn't want to talk to me right now because I sent him a message after the European elections, I think it was. He went for the European elections and he went for the wasn't a seat up in Longford. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm looking at the comments on the other laptop, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was the timing. I sometimes have terrible timing. Like, he went for the election the day after. I mean, I was on good terms with John. I am on good terms with John. Maybe he just wanted a break, but I sent him a message saying, hard luck with the elections. Sorry it didn't work out. Maybe the political solution isn't going to work right now. And then I sent him a link about whatever, the book and stuff. So maybe he just didn't like that. Maybe my time was a little bit shit. That's right, yeah, Midlands Northwest. So that's like, is that Roscommon, that kind of neck of the woods? I think he's up there, isn't he? Yeah, John's popular. Everybody likes listening to John. He's a very poetic man, an absolute gentleman as well. And I actually managed to get him on X there a while ago. It was with Keitho, Mike Connell, Rob Holiday. Right, that's quite a stretch. Yeah, Donegal, yeah. But I had him on and the X Space, and it was really good. It went down really well. Everybody liked it. John had a good time. I feel a bit bad because I was the one who organised to get him onto the space, and it was supposed to be just for 2 hours or something like that. But then Keitho wanted him to stick around longer, and people start asking him questions. Before you know it, he did like 2.5 hours. So I don't know if he blamed me for that one. But John's good. The reason why I don't tend to do interviews nowadays because I feel like I should be getting on the mic more, talking about Marxism and analysing that, because that really is the most important issue. That's the core of all the trouble that we're dealing with. If only more people caught on to that. So nowadays I only communicate with people who want to talk about that, to be honest. It's such a big problem. But I do have the interview chops, and I suppose I could do that. I'm going to be doing some content with Brandon Martinez as well. And we're going to be collaborating on some things and doing, interviews and different types of content. So I can interview people. And I was thinking of getting back into that. We're mostly focused on promoting the book. So for anyone who doesn't know, maybe you've already seen it. If you follow me already, the pinned tweet on my X profile has the University of Dallas lecture, which I'd highly recommend. That is the main thing I'm promoting at the moment, because obviously not everyone's going to read the book. Some people have read the book, which is great, but it is a bit of a monster at over 600 pages. But the presentation was designed to reach people without them having to read the book if people are too busy or too lazy or whatever it is. And I'm just going to actually copy that into the chat in case anyone hasn't seen it. Because I don't care how I do this, but I want to get the message out there any way I can. So there, I just copied that into the chat there. It's the pinned tweet on my profile. Whoever hasn't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. Because that's where it's at, you know. This is going to be the answer to get out of this mess we're in. You know, Marxism is globalism, and Marxist brainwashing is a type of brainwashing that makes people go along with globalism. So say if you look at what's happened in Ireland recently, I'll talk about the elections and stuff in a minute, but look at what's happening across the West. You've got a portion of the population who want to stop things, want things to change, who want, you know, are against globalism and open borders and radical sex ed and trans ideology, the climate change movement and all this crap, the attack on free speech, hate crime, blah, 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 all this stuff, you know, we're all against this. There's a portion of the population that are against it. There's a portion of people generally in the middle who might have their head up their arse, head in the clouds, apathetic, apolitical and so on. Then you've got the other camp on the other side who are the pro-globalist camp. And it's not just the government. You know, it can be people from any part of society who are brainwashed to go along with this stuff. And Marxist brainwashing is the brainwashing that makes them go along with it. So the argument in my work is if that group, if we didn't have that problem in our societies, we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. We'd certainly be out of it a lot easier. And but looking at the recent, get into the recent election shenanigans. For those who don't know, in Ireland, it was November 29th was the general election, and a lot of people had hopes there's going to be big changes. And oh, John, good evening, my friend. How are you? Good to see your message. Hope you saw my email earlier. So yeah, with the election recently, a lot of people were hoping things are going to change. And to be honest, I wasn't hoping anything. I didn't think anything big would change, right? Because it just, as I always say, there's a lot of problems that haven't been fixed. And for people to expect things to just turn around with the election was a little bit naive, right? But now we're all hopeful. But having said that, you know, I didn't want to say anything before the election because people start accusing you of being guilty or being negative or being a subverter or some other bullshit, right? So I decided to keep my mouth shut. But in private conversations, I was talking to some people saying that, you know, I wasn't hoping things are going to change. By the way, let me know if my mic is loud enough. I'm coming through at 50% on the meter. So anyone listening, if the audio is clear, no problem. But just checking, I could do a little bit more power. Yeah, John, I did send you an email later. My email, make sure it might be in the junk mail. So it's contact@resolvingaurora.com is my email address. The one you emailed before was contactaurora@protonmail.com, right? So if you go to your junk mail, you should have received my email earlier. I sent you the article in an attached document, a Word document. But if you don't have it, no problem. Thanks for that. Yeah, great, no worries. Just checking the mic's okay. I can't hear myself. So regards to the elections, I do want to say anything beforehand, right? Like I said, because people think you're being negative and so on. But I think I see it as being, it's like a step in the process, right? We had to go through it in Ireland to realise that we're not well organised enough to get out of this mess. I mean, you have to be honest about your abilities in life, whether you're an individual or you're a part of a movement. You have to be realistic about your strengths and weaknesses and how organised you are. And I'm going to say this, and to be honest, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we deserve to get out of this mess yet in Ireland? No, because though we are ethically right and righteous, yeah, of course, globalism, the internationalist, globalist monster we're all fighting, yeah, it's evil, it's wrong, you know, we should stand up against this, etc., etc. But I'm talking about in terms of a tactical, technical point of view, who's more organised? Who's more professional? You know, that side is, and that's the truth, right? You can call them crazy, you can call them evil, You can call them controlling, degenerates, whatever you want, but you can't accuse them of being disorganized. You can't accuse them of being all over the place and non-united, because they are. Now, again, this is what confuses people outside. What are you talking about? The WEF? Are you talking about the government? Are you talking about... It's all one. That's what I've been saying for years. It's all the one movement. They're just very good at compartmentalizing themselves and making you think it's different groups. So the government, the political left, the mainstream media, the NGO complex, the civil service, the police force, the European Union, the WEF, the UN, you name it, it's all just one movement. It's all one internationalist movement. And though they're kind of compartmentalized, ideologically speaking, they're all one and they're all united. Whereas you look at the nationalist movement in Ireland, the anti-globalist movement, it's very, very fragmented. It's very... You've got, 3 nationalistic groups in there. In a small country like Ireland, you've got Ireland First, the National Party, and the Irish Freedom Party. Now, before I continue, I respect a lot of the individuals involved, and I respect patriots by default. But in such a small country, with such a small movement, that's already too many groups, in my opinion. And this is not a knock on anyone. This is not insulting anybody. I'm talking from a management, professional, organizational, efficiency point of view. That's already too many groups, right? 3 groups. And the slight differences in terms of ideology. Now, I respect, I won't get into personalities. I respect a lot of the people involved and think they're all generally on the right track being nationalistic, I would say. But there are nuances, and that creates splits. So for people who aren't Irish, to go over some of the dynamics here, let's simplify it here, okay? So imagine this is the whole Irish population. That group there are the full-on brainwashed lefty group, pro-globalist group, traitors, degenerates, whether it's politicians, activists, members of the media, whatever you want, are on that side, okay? The people who are part of the problem on that side, okay? In the middle of the population, all sorts of people, the apathetic, the lazy, the disinterested, people who aren't registered to vote, people with conspiracy theory personalities who think it's, the David Icke types, reality isn't real, there's no point in all this, the nihilist, blah, blah, blah. Everybody who's just neutral or useless in the middle. And on the other side, you have the people who understand globalism is bad, who understand a nationalistic point of view is the constructive one, and that's where we should be going. So they're trying to help, they're trying to fuck things up, and these people in the middle are useless, right? In a small country like Ireland, the Republic of Ireland population is about 5.3 million, right? So I don't know what the figures are exactly, but the nationalistic camp is probably a few 100,000. I don't know, maybe 1 million, maybe more than that. It's hard to know. A friend of mine put the estimate for the other camp, the Marxist camp, the state and the activists and all, up to about 500,000. It could be 1 million. I don't know what the figures are. But my point is, back to what I was saying, this nationalist camp, when you think of the odds, what you're up against the mainstream media, the government, the cabinet of, 12 members of the Irish government or whatever it is, 15 members. The government as a whole, which is all essentially globalist, is all Marxist, right? Whereas power is globalist. The NGO complex, the civil service, the mainstream media, the education system, elements of the police force, that's a big, big organised machine, and it's all united generally. It's keeping Ireland, part of this globalist system. When you're up against a system like that and you're outnumbered and they have all the weapons and they have all the money and they have control of the government, if you're going to oppose that, your group needs to be extremely well streamlined. If you don't have the money, you don't have the weapons, you don't have any political power. I'm talking about everybody in the nationalist camp in Ireland doesn't have any political power. They've got popularity. They don't have any political power, right? The ability to affect change or to make changes, right? So you've no political power and you've no money and you've no weapons and you're not even the biggest group in terms of bodies. You better be streamlined and well organized. That's the issue. And that's not the case. And that's why nothing happened in the election. That's why no people got in to the Irish Parliament, the Irish Dáil, right? Now, I understand that there's definitely going to be a certain amount of rigging and cheating going on when you're up against the globalist system. You can call them lefties, you can call them whatever they want. They never fight fair. And as we saw in the American election this time, because I was in America recently, Trump won the election. One of the reasons why they won, okay, it was kind of more or less a landslide against Marxism, which the Democrats certainly are, and Harris certainly is. But on top of that, the Patriots, the American Patriots, were ready for cheating. I don't know if you knew that. They were watching out for that, and they literally had people, near the polling centers recording anything that was going on. They even caught the Democrats bringing in, deliveries of ballots at nighttime. Just suspicious activity. My point is, they were ready for them because of what happened in one of the previous elections, which got Biden in there, the first place. That commie junkie traitor, who I wouldn't put that guy in charge of a sandwich. Never mind the fucking, country. So my point is, cheating's always going to be a factor with them. Now, in the case of the Irish elections, right, that's not the primary factor. I'm not saying it's all rigged. That's all we have to worry about. It was only cheating that caused that outcome. Not at all. But there was definitely a little bit of cheating and so on going on. And I don't know how much there was, because I'm not the one counting the ballots. But I'm saying that that's definitely a factor that needs to be paid attention to, the whole cheating thing. But it's not the major factor. There is a big portion of the Irish population who are not registered to vote. Great, thanks, Kieran. There's a part of the population who is not registered to vote in the middle. Some people are feeling disillusioned and so on with the system. So there's a lot of issues, but also the cheating and the vote rigging is another one. In my opinion, looking around at the social discourse in Ireland, listen to the X Spaces in particular, to just get a feel for what people are saying and how they're thinking. In my opinion, the level of ignorance towards Marxism is still too high. Globalism, Marxism, global communism, it's all the same thing. Internationalism, right? The level of ignorance towards this ideology is still low, quite low in Ireland and in other Western countries, but in Ireland definitely it's the case. And that includes people not understanding the cheating, conspiratorial, subversive nature of these crazy bastards and the stuff that they'll do. They'll never fight fair when they're losing because they believe they're right and they believe that we are crazy. So my point is, the cheating wasn't a big factor in this election. They didn't need to cheat, you see. They didn't need to cheat. But say if we had another election next year, which won't happen probably, but imagine if it did. We magically had another election next year or the year after. I'm not confident the outcome would be any different. One of the reasons being is that you're up against this enemy who's good at cheating and so on. If you legitimately get the voting numbers up and bring people more towards nationalism, then they start to cheat, you see. So there's always another level. And that's why I really keep coming back to the same thing. The level of understanding of what we're dealing with. It's an internationalist control system that's going to fight tooth and nail to keep people going along with this bullshit. It's pushing us towards an internationalist dystopia. If that's not clear to people by now, I don't really know what to say. How bad does it have to get before people can see that? And now, funny thing as well, we've been conditioned for years to think, many of us are conditioned to think, you don't want to be called racist, and everyone can see that's like, emotional control. But what about the term conspiracy theorist? That's another one, right? People who question COVID and so on are being called conspiracy theorists. But when I talk about the international control system, people will call you conspiracy theorist, But that's exactly what it is. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy about global control. And if people are going to be afraid to be called a conspiracy theorist, they're not going to look at it. They're not going to understand that's what we're dealing with. And conspiracy is the name of the game. I mean, vote rigging, election rigging, cheating, that's conspiracy by definition. You've got more than at least two parties involved who are working together for a common goal, usually by subversive means, or that's the very definition of a conspiracy. So, I mean, like I was saying, I wasn't hoping there was going to be, I wasn't expecting big changes from the election, right? But what I insist on, there's nothing wrong with losing the fight sometimes or the battle, but you have to fucking learn from it. That's the thing. Otherwise, it's a waste of experience, you know. So looking at the aftermath, there's been some good responses from people and so on, but you also get some shitty attitudes as well, like people having the wrong attitude, like saying, it's all hopeless and they give up. Let's go to a violent solution. You know, they want to go to have a physical rebellion when they haven't done a proper job of going for the political solution yet, you know. Or other people saying it was all about cheating and election rigging. They're afraid to look at the other factors which are more to blame for the outcome, like the fact a lot of people aren't registered to vote. And not enough people are choosing nationalist parties. There's too much division within the nationalist camp. Those are all much higher priorities than the vote rigging election. I mentioned it is a factor and it will be a factor later, but it's not the major factor now. See what I'm getting at here? There's a lot of streamlining that needs to be done with people's attitudes, I think. Otherwise, the whole experience is a waste. But with all that being said, my opinion, because this is just, I'm putting on my manager hat, right? Because I've got a lot of different people who know me know I've got a lot of different strings to my bow, right? Different things I've done in the past. One of the things I did when I was younger, I'm a very good organizer, particularly with events, right? I just have a talent for making things happen and being efficient, and just professionalism and an eye for detail. Like, I probably got it from a few different sources. I don't know exactly where I got it from. I've done a lot of things over the years. But that's where my opinion's coming from. This idea of streamlining, right? So looking at the nationalist movement in Ireland, and this may sound a little bit controversial, I think that the only thing that's going to work in Ireland is one unified movement, right? And that goes against some people's sensibilities, because they might think it's unfeasible, or they might think you're not respecting people's different opinions or whatever it is. I'm just from an efficiency point of view, with such a small movement, and when the odds are stacked against you, and like I said, you don't have any money, you don't have any political power, you don't have any weapons, and you're trying to go up against this big system, you can't afford any splits in the group, and it's such a small group. And it's, if you have all these people, you know, candidates in different counties, different parts of the country, all this patriotic energy is wasted. It's inefficient. That's what I've been talking about for a while. There's plenty of enthusiasm for change in Ireland. There's plenty of intelligence. There's plenty of great people, men and women, like my brothers and sisters, patriots that I love, are making great contributions. There's plenty of talent, there's plenty of passion, there's plenty of enthusiasm, but the level of efficiency is terrible. And that's my opinion from a professional, analytical, organizational point of view. The energy is going in all these different directions, and it's never going to produce results. So that's why I think a unified movement is the only way to go. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because you've got three prominent nationalistic groups. And a quick summary again for anyone who's not abreast of the details at the moment or up to date. You've got, say, Ireland First, run by Mr. Derek Bly, which is intact. It doesn't have any dramas as far as I know. It's united and so on. And Derek is based down the south of Ireland, so I'm guessing he's got candidates around the country. Excuse my ignorance here. I'm sure he's got candidates around the country, but I'm guessing that most of his impact is down in his neck of the woods. You've got the National Party, right, which obviously had the leadership problems with Justin Barrett before, and James Reynolds, and apparently there was a coup. So Justin Barrett is technically still the leader on paper, but he doesn't actually have the group behind him. So there's legal stuff happening, and we don't know what's going to happen there exactly. The kind of de facto leader, apparently, according to the grapevine and Justin Barrett himself, is Mr. Patrick Quinlan, right? He was not the leader on paper. Now, so I don't really know what's going to happen with that group, but that's another prominent nationalist group. And you've also got Irish Freedom Party. Mr. Herman Kelly runs that group. Now, they've had some drama recently that'll probably blow over. Parties tend to have dramas sometimes, particularly after elections and so on. Tempers flare, so I don't really know what's going on there. I've heard some of the rumors. I don't really want to comment on that, but my point is that that is a functioning group. It still exists. It still has a leader on paper, but so that's a summary of what's going on with them. But they're not all the same ideologically. So, I'm not sure quite where the coup faction of the National Party are at. Sorry, let me go back to Ireland first of all. As far as I know, Ireland First, they call themselves a centre-right party. They're nationalistic. I support them. Everything I know about them I like. And I think Derek Bly is fantastic. And he's a decent, hard-working, honest Irish patriot. There's no bullshit or frills with him. I've had a bit of contact with Derek, and it's been reciprocal respect as far as I know, right? So I can't see any issues with that group ideologically, and I don't think anyone else has an issue with them ideologically either, as far as I know. I think Derek's universally popular as far as I'm aware, and then you've got the National Party is the second group I mentioned. So this is a little bit different now. They're definitely nationalistic. I'm not quite sure where the coup faction stands, but I think they do have tendencies towards national socialist thing a little bit. It's definitely part of their persona, I think. Maybe that's changed. Maybe when Justin Barrett was removed, and they had the coup faction, maybe they changed ideologically. I know they redid their principles. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I'd say they're still nationalistic as far as I know, which I see as being a good thing. And then there's the Irish Freedom Party with Herman Kelly, who a lot of people kind of call a CivNat group. Like, when people put groups into these boxes of being ethno-nationalist and civic nationalist, and this is a large subject. My point is, in terms of, back to what I was saying about how can we form a united group, I know a lot of people wouldn't be willing to get behind the notion of civic nationalism because they don't feel it's nationalistic enough for them. And this is where the problems start, because the whole ethno-nationalist thing can be an emotive debate. And as I always say, and I said it last night in the space, yes, it is true that Ireland, we should protect. It's part of opposing globalism to protect your culture, protect your people, protect your racial homogeneity in Ireland's case. And that should be definitely on the table, right? But then it can get a little bit tricky because we're talking about people and we're talking about genetic makeup, and a lot of people are different. Not everybody in Ireland is 100% Irish, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. See, my point is, before I go too much into the detail, this allows splits to happen in the movement, right? So some people would say, I'm more of an ethno-nationalist, I don't like the civic nationalist idea. I don't like the idea that someone can be given a status as an Irish citizen or whatever if they're not ethnically Irish, and you start having these divisions. But before even going deeper into it, not all ideas are of equal value. And I find it quite funny that in Ireland, as I mentioned, none of the characters I mentioned or the parties I mentioned have any political power. They've got memberships, they've got fans, they've got popularity, and so on. They don't have the ability to affect change and make any decisions. So I don't want people to get me wrong here, but I think the idea of trying to be too fussy and wanting it your own way when you actually have no chance of achieving anything sounds a little bit funny to me. I think people have to be willing to make compromises. So for example, I'm not saying I go along with this necessarily, but imagine if going along with a more, a middle ground between being ethno-nationalist and civic nationalist, and just being in the middle and having some flexibility with the ideas. If you go down that road and you're able to pull in large numbers, right, and try to move towards creating that united group, that's a lot better from an efficiency point of view than being one of those extremes and having much less numbers in the group and creating a division. This is just the principles of organization here. I'm not saying one is better than the other at all. I'm just saying in terms of the principles of organization here, this is how you start to create united movement. Because remember that if the groups stay divided, if they stay divided as they are in these little groups, nothing's going to change. And Irish people are going to be wiped out in their own country. We're never going to get control. So for example, not picking on anyone personally, but imagine, say, like a Justin Barrett, who I've liked Justin's speeches over the years. He can be a great dynamic speaker. He's got a good fan base and so on. A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people do like him. And there's the whole National Socialist tendencies and all this stuff, which puts a lot of people off, right? But say you look at Justin's mindset, right? Some people would say it's quite admirable that he's unwavering and that he's deciding to take a very strong ethno-nationalist stance. And that's a good thing. Well, I understand having principles and sticking to your principles, but if sticking to your principles means you stay in that position and you never get the fan base, and you never will, get the support, popular support, to develop that into a movement that actually affects real change, well then it's inefficient. It's not effective. So you can say that you're being noble or righteous or ethical all you want, but if it's not producing results, that's no good. And if everyone had that attitude, and this is not a knock on Justin at all, I'm just saying, I'm using that as an example. If everyone had that attitude and they decide to stick to their principles, but you never ended up achieving organization and nothing ever changed, well then we are all going to sink. Like, what good is that? Now, on the other side of the argument, just to balance things out, see the Herman Kelly and the Irish Freedom Party have had that notion that some people look at that and go, well, we don't like the fact his ideological stance. He seems to be welcoming people into the group who are not ethnically Irish. Like there was a gentleman, I can't remember his name, I think of African origin, who gave a presentation about mass immigration. A lot of people took issue with that. And, it can get a little bit complex because you're talking about personalities. But obviously, imagine, to keep things balanced here, I don't think Herman Kelly, as far as I know, is saying that ethnicity doesn't matter at all and it's okay for Irish people to be bred out of our own country. I don't think he's ever said that. I haven't seen any evidence of that, and I would like to see evidence of that. If anyone has some, post it in the comments or send me a DM on X or something, and I bet you won't be able to find any examples of that. I don't think that's his stance, right? But someone who's more on the ethno-nationalist side of things, if they're quite fanatical about that, they would reject Herman's stance and say it's not strong enough, it's not good enough, so this is part of the problem. And you have a lot of different groups involved, and they're not all correct. They're not all correct, and there has to be some sort of a way to fix this problem. Otherwise, it all goes to shit. It all goes down the toilet, And I see, as well as just to mention the whole thing with the National Party as well. I mean, it's no secret that a lot of people have said that Justin has a bit of an affinity towards National Socialism. Now, my personal opinion on that is, I'm not an advocate of National Socialism. A lot of people think I have advocated that in the past, and think that it's the antithesis to globalism, and that this is a really good way out of the mess. I don't really agree with that. I don't think we need that, first of all. I think we need nationalism, but I don't think we need socialism. And I don't agree with other components of it which tend to go together. Like I think that kind of ideology tends to put too much emphasis on ethnicity, too much, to the point where it becomes unfeasible in a way. And also there's a whole connection with the whole Zio thing and blaming the Jews for everything, which I've said loads of times recently I don't agree with either. When you look at Ireland's, the situation Ireland is in, we've got less than 3,000 Jews in the country, according to the statistics for last year, with a population of 5.3 million in the Republic. So less than 3,000 Jews, but 5.3 million in the country, and people want to blame the Jews for what's happening to Ireland. Technically, that's not true, and I explain it in the book. The problem in Ireland, and this ties into my work, the major problem in Ireland is like the groups I mentioned earlier. People who are brainwashed to be traitors, people who are lazy, apathetic, the corrupt and so on, and over 95% of them are Irish. Way over 95% statistically, must be over 99%. So that's why I don't agree with that part of the ideology. And the reason National Socialism, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, like I was saying earlier, if you've got, say, again, I'm not picking on the men involved. I respect the individuals involved. It's not about that. I'm just trying to work the problem here logically. But if you had a Herman Kelly who's got his stance, and you got a Justin Barrett who's got his stance, and Justin's principles, as I just talked about, are not really, those things are not really necessary or constructive, and they're refusing to work together, and some people go with that person, some people go with that person, that's a failure of the people involved, not just the leaders, but people who follow them. That's a failure of them to understand what the best decision is. Back to what I said in the beginning, some people are assuming that we deserve to get out of this mess. No, we don't. We don't. Because you need to have a collective, the average level of intelligence within the group needs to be high enough. I'm talking about as a nation. If it's not high enough, we're going to be wiped out in our own countries and bred out because we can't get organized because of splits like I talked about. So I think the solution is to have a form of healthy nationalism that's going to cut through that bullshit, that's going to cut through the nonsense to bridge those ideological gaps. That's the issue, because again, the principles of organization, the principles of efficiency tell me that that's what's required, and I hope other people can see that. So we just cut out the opinions for a minute, the different groups, looking from an organizational point of view. Nothing's going to work unless having that united movement. Now, I know there were attempts. For those who don't know, there was attempts at setting up like a national alliance with different groups involved. From what I can see, it was a little bit too recent and a bit haphazard and last minute. I mean, I appreciate the gesture, and I saw a video clip of Derek Bly standing beside Patrick Quinlan and another representative, I can't remember, from the Irish People's Party, I think, and meeting up. And that's a good thing that they tried. But from what I heard coming up to the election, there wasn't quite a lot of coordination. So just because it didn't work this time doesn't mean it should be thrown in the trash. And certainly there's a bit of time between now and the next major election, we assume. So there should be time to get this organized properly, so at least somebody tried to do it in some respect. But it needs to be done again and done more professionally. And it's down to the individuals involved. I mean, it just, unfortunately, because of the mess we're in, if you've got a few groups involved and a few leaders, and again, not picking on anyone individually, but imagine you had a leader who is, objectively speaking, being unreasonable and not willing to work with the others for no good reason, then it's not going to work. And actually, on that note, I think that what should happen, if we can work out this problem of the having a clear, maybe put it down on paper. I would write it myself. I would happily meet with some of these leaders myself and have some other people involved to draft up a joint, manifesto. I don't want to say manifesto, but a joint ideological middle ground that everyone could get on board with, that would suit everybody. If we could all get on board with that and then get people to have a reasonable level of agreement with it, if people aren't willing to kind of go along with that, they should be kind of ostracized. Yeah, no worries, Trish. Actually, just make sure the problem is on your end. So just check your volume slider in YouTube first of all, and then check the volume on your device, because everyone else seems to think it's okay. I'm coming through over 50, 60% here. So so, and actually, to finish my point, I think that, imagine we all agreed in Ireland that, okay, this is the ideology we want to represent us, to get us out of this mess. People who aren't going to go along with that out of stubbornness or whatever it is, or being unreasonable, whatever, they should just be ostracized. They shouldn't be given any support. So, for example, imagine somebody in Ireland said, trying to think of an example. Imagine somebody in Ireland said, we have to, no worries, Trish, just making sure it's not your end there. So I'm trying to think of an example. If someone just had an outright, unconstructive stance. Or here's a typical one. Imagine someone in Ireland said, it should be part of the same thing. Would you mind checking your devices there, because I'm coming through okay here. I'll turn up the mic. We'll probably start the clip. Is that a little bit better? Just let me know if that's I can see it coming through in the meter a little bit higher. Test 1 2 1 2 1 2. That should be better. I'm clipping on the I'm clipping on the sound device down here. Just Yeah, so that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do to sort this out. And I mean, the thing is, looking on the bright side again from an organizational point of view. Cheers. I think from an organizational point of view, looking on the bright side, considering how the fact, like I was saying, this is no offense to anyone, considering the fact that none of the nationalist groups have any power right now, and well, I think Derek's got reasonable level of popularity, but because of the drama recently with the Irish Freedom Party, people said it's affected Herman's I've a good relationship with Herman. I don't have any problems with Herman personally at all. So just put that on the table. I'm just saying that publicly, maybe he's dropped a bit of popularity and so on. And I'm not quite sure what's going on there. To be continued. And then you've got thing with Justin. Justin's always going to polarize people. So he's got his hardcore fans, but on the other side of it, he's never going to get the popular support because of his ideological stances. So where was I going with that? So my point is that the nationalist movement in Ireland isn't so well developed and formed that it can't be restructured. Looking on the bright side of what happened with the elections, this is probably a good time to streamline it, because there is no group that can say, well, no, we've got a massive amount of support here. We're absolutely kicking arse. We've got plenty of power. Everything's going great for us the way it is right now, and we don't need to change. I don't think any nationalist group in Ireland can make that claim right now. There's only 3 of them, and none of them can make that claim. And even the independents as well. Not everyone's part of a party. But you look at the cheers. You look at the independents right now. Again, I respect all patriots if they're on the right track ideologically. I respect them even if they don't agree with everything I say. Right? I'm just thinking to say like a Gavin Pepper. I've had zero contact with Gavin Pepper, by the way, but I know he's quite popular and a lot of people like him. He seems to be a working class leader with a lot of community support and all. There's a lot of other characters like that. As far as I know, he didn't get in, and other people didn't get in as well, which kind of shocked a lot of people. But again, whether a person's part of a party or they're an independent, there's no one in Ireland in the nationalist camp can say that our system is working, everything's good, we don't need to change, we don't need to make compromises because we kicked arse, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Nobody can claim to be in that position. Now, what I recommend, and I'm going to start talking about this more and more whenever I get the chance, and like I was saying, I'm in Spain at the minute. I might be going back to Ireland. I don't know what the future holds for me. We'll see what happens in the future, depending on how things go in Ireland, such, or at least for a visit, we'll see what happens. But whenever I'm talking to people now in Ireland specifically, this is what my advice is that we need to fix that problem of how do we form a unified movement. Now, people with the wrong attitude for whatever reason in the mix are part of the problem. And the contradiction of it is that, again, how can anyone claim that their way is the best when it hasn't produced results? They don't have any power, And I'm not picking any person or group here. That's why I think the more the whole National Socialist stance tends to cause a lot of problems, because some people think it's the way, and it's the way out of this mess. It's the opposition to this globalist system and so on. But there's a few problems with it. One of them is I don't agree with socialism. I believe in the idea of having a more, keeping a certain amount of, liberal economics and limited amount, very little state involvement, but it'll end up being ultimately a mixed economy like most economies are. But that's one part of National Socialism I don't agree with, and I don't agree with the fact that simply, for God's sake, it's a quarter of a way through the 21st century now, right? Ireland has nothing at all in common with 1920s, 1930s Weimar Germany. It's nothing in common with it at all, including ethnically speaking, because the Germans, we're not a million miles away from the Germans ethnically, but we're not the same either, right? So Ireland's got very little in common with Germany. So I don't see why we have to have an ideological stance based on a country, that happened a long time ago. There's no need for us to go down that road. But unfortunately, a lot of people in Ireland have bought into that and think that that's a good idea. I think that's a mistake, and that's what I'm talking about. People with the wrong ideological stance, they think they've got it all figured out, And they're going to drag in a lot of the patriotic energy, a lot of the membership. They're going to drag in money through donations. They're going to drag in bodies. They're going to gobble up some of the votes. Now again, I apologise if, say, the National Party under the coup faction or Patrick Quinlan have decided to go down a different road. Maybe they've lightened up on that stuff, which kind of invalidates my point, but maybe they haven't. I don't really know. But again, if they have lightened up and they're not going down those roads and they have got a healthy form of nationalism, great. Then that can be put into the pot, the one I'm talking about, the mixed pot of different groups. I should probably expand a bit more on the whole civic nationalist thing, the ethnic nationalist thing, because I think that those terms have been drummed up to create division as well. Because again, we've got another split. It splits the nationalist movement, and it shouldn't at all. But it does create a split. Some people think that what they call civic nationalism isn't good enough because it completely ignores the ethnic element to, this global war we're fighting, and there undoubtedly is an ethnic element, so it shouldn't be ignored. But like I said, I don't think that Irish Freedom Party are ignoring that from what I see. They're just not putting emphasis on it. That's the thing. And as well as that, you look at, say, Ireland. There's plenty of people in Ireland who are not 100% ethnically Irish. Should they all be deported? No, they shouldn't. It depends. We have to have a grading system for people, right? Yeah, a grading system. So, for example, someone who comes fresh off the boat from Nigeria into Africa, who doesn't have a passport, who could be an absolute sociopath and who's trying to murder someone in the street or sexually assault somebody, they're obviously not the same as a person who has got African genetics, who was born in Ireland and who's lived in Ireland 20 years. They're not the same, are they? So we shouldn't be treating them the same. I'm not saying anyone is suggesting that we do. I'm just pointing that out. Not all individuals are the same. We have to be rational here. Another element as well. So we should have grading systems for the migrants, and no doubt there should be deportations for certain types of migrants, and that should be on the cards. But again, you see, I don't have any political power, and neither do you watching, or neither does anyone else involved with the nationalist movement. So, saying that, on my first day in power, I would deport these types of people, it's just hypothetical talk, right? Because we can't actually do it. But back to the ideological stuff, working out a system of who is, their priorities in terms of their ethnic background and how they impact Ireland should be a top priority, And obviously you could get somebody who is 100% ethnically not Irish, who's been in the country a certain amount of time. They might have the exact same genetics as someone who arrived, last week or a few months ago. And who the first person could be working, contributing to the economy, could be a law-abiding citizen. Are they the same as someone who just arrived off the boat with the same genetics? No, they're not the same. Now, are they Irish? No, they're not Irish. The person who's here 20 years, in Ireland, 20 years, who might even have the passport. Are they Irish? No, they're not, because being Irish is obviously has an ethnic component to it as well. I'm not denying that. So there's like a grading system. Now, back to what I was saying earlier. If someone says, I'm an ethno-nationalist and I want Ireland to be 95% white, this is exactly, 95% Irish, ethnically speaking. Now, this is exactly the kind of stupid bullshit I'm talking about. Again, this is a person just like me or you, who's on the internet, who's got no power, who's asking for the bar to be set yay high when this person has zero political power or the ability to affect change, right? That's part of the stupidity I'm talking about. Why is it stupid? Because that person there will say, I refuse to work with that person over there, because they're not talking about the same thing I'm talking about. And then you got your split again. And now we've got a split based on what? This is the kind of shit I'm talking about. Again, as I've already just laid out, if you've read my book or my work, or when I start doing podcasts in this brand over 2018, I've always been talking about the ethnic component. I've always been talking about it. I know full well. Everything you know, I guarantee. Right? I've been in this game over 20 years, right? When it comes to the ethnic stuff, the agenda to wipe out white people, eugenics, the United Nations, the Fabian Society, there's a whole section in my book about this stuff. So I know everything you know. But yet I'm saying I've changed a bit. I don't put as much of a fanatical emphasis on the ethno ethnic part of it as I used to, because it's not efficient to try to gain political power. And that's part of the, I think, one of the points I'm going to have to struggle to get across in online discourses and so on. Because the minute, again, you talk the way I'm talking, people accuse you of being not a real nationalist, or you're being a civic nationalist, or you don't quite understand the globalist system and so on. I reiterate the point. Ireland, being Irish, has an ethnic component to it. We do have a responsibility to resist this attempt to breed out Irish people in their own country. Of course, but I'm saying being overly rigid with that in the short term when you don't have any political power and allowing it to create ideological divisions is stupid, because you're all going to be wiped out anyway. You see what I'm saying? There's a problem here with, I'm starting to think of this more and more. There's a real problem that even Irish people have within the nationalist movement of logic, problem-solving ability. They're just missing, and they just get into these talking points and keep repeating them, and they've no idea that they're sabotaging their own chances of actually getting out of this mess because of the way they process the information. That's the problem. It's not the information they have, it's where they're processing the information. Their intelligence is the problem. That's part of it. And on the ethnic stuff, the ethnic element, all this, what would I do to fix it? Well, there's a few different tiers. First of all, you stop mass immigration. What I would do if I was running the show is, if I was the Irish president, the Irish Taoiseach, Prime Minister, right, for any non-Irish person, I would put out a statement to every single government in the world. I'd make a video in my office to the camera, like Donald Trump does or someone else does or whatever. I'd make an announcement to every government in the world that Ireland is not taking in any more immigrants. I'd put out that to the European Union, the United Nations, everybody, and I'd send it out. I'd use my assistants to send out that video message to everybody, the mainstream media all across the West, the NGO complex, whether non-profits in Ireland or anywhere. Ireland is done taking in immigrants, first of all, right? I would also involve in deportations. I would again have that. I'd have a group set up to do a proposal on the tiering system for immigrants, right? I would start a deportation process. I'd probably use the commercial liners, to deport people, because trying to deport immigrants, particularly immigrants from parts of the world that are a little bit more unsavory, trying to deport them on aircraft when they've been told that Ireland is the land of milk and honey and they're going to get free money, then they're being rounded up by my government or my police or army or whatever and being deported. They're not going to like it. So, people kicking off on planes and getting violent is a problem, whether they have weapons or not, So I would probably use shipping to do that myself. I'd use the Irish Navy. If they came from the UK, they're going back to the UK. If they're coming from elsewhere, they're going back there. Anybody who arrives in Ireland without a passport is taken from the airport to a holding centre, again, which is under armed guard. I'd have people would have water, food and water, somewhere to use the toilet, probably showers and so on, but we'd start the deportation process. I'd also put out another decree as well, and this is a major problem across Europe. Any immigrants that engage in violent or sexual crime against Irish people would be shot on the spot by the police force. I'd put that out as a public decree as well. To send out a message that this kind of thing is not tolerated, so people could be rounded up, because the health and safety of Irish people needs to be given a priority. These are just some of my ideas, but again, like I was saying before, if you try to do stuff like that, you've got the element of the Irish brainwashed traitors in the country. People are brainwashed on all different levels of brainwashing, who would go against what you're saying, go against what I'm suggesting, that it's inhumane, that it's against human rights, blah, 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 the usual bullshit. And as you all should very well know, these nut jobs, they don't seem to have any problem with the Irish people being ethnically replaced. They don't seem to have any problems with the Irish people being bred out of their own countries on an ethnic level, right? Or they're always making excuse for crimes against Irish people. They don't seem to have any emotion or compassion for the Irish, But the minute you start talking about deportations and taking actions against immigrants, all of a sudden they pull out the fucking violins. And it's all about compassion again. So there's clearly an anti-Irish racist double standard going on. So me chucking out ideas about how I would deal with the situation is all well and good. But if you don't have enough people in the population to support you, that's the problem. And I've been talking about this a lot. The feminization of the culture that's been brought on because of Marxism. This has been a progressive thing since the 1800s, because the Marxist brainwashing of the feminization of society, that, you know, oppression is the thing we should all be worried about, and no one should ever suffer, and suffering is bad, unless you're a far-right Nazi, of course. You know, they deserve to suffer according to the Marxists. But everyone else, you know, it's all about emotion, having an effeminate stance towards things. That kind of brainwashing is a major problem. That's going to stop us fixing problems in the future, because people who are brainwashed will start coming out and talking about emotions and humanitarianism and so on and so forth. And they will actively get in the way. You know, you look at, say, for people who aren't Irish, you've got Shannon Airport down the southwest of Ireland that has been used as a stopover by the Americans going to the Middle East since about 2002. And for years, you have the Marxist anti-war groups. You know, it's a fallout from the Cold War. Marxist, anti-American, anti-Western protests. They go down to that airport and protest. They've damaged aircraft and stuff. They still do it today. They're probably intensifying it now recently because of what's happening in Syria. That would be, you can imagine them. Imagine if someone like me was running the show, or some other nationalist was running the Irish government. You'd have these people trying to organise protests to protect the immigrants. And this is where things start to turn a little bit nasty. And this is why I've been talking about this for a while, where you have the Marxist camp would start to form an alliance with immigrants, right? As a physical military context, would start to form an alliance against Irish patriots, you see, to physically fight back and stop... you know, when you go against their plans and stuff. There's a whole myriad of problems here connected in with this, and it's going to be a big, big struggle. I mean, it is doable. It is feasible to achieve these things, but as I keep coming back to, if people don't understand Marxism, you're wasting your time, because people are going to continuously get divided and confused. And when it breaks down into a conflict, they won't know who the enemy is, and they don't understand who they're up against and what the tactics are. They're going to be, you know, manipulated with their emotions again to stand down and to stop being so aggressive and so on and so forth. The whole thing's just a big mess. But to come back to what I was saying about the ideological situation, that's what I'm pushing, going to start pushing going forward, is this idea of having a unity. But I mean, maybe we'll see what happens. There's 3 groups. I'm sure that's, I mean... I don't know, I don't have an insight into the emotional states of the people involved with the patriotic movement in Ireland right now. Maybe some of them are feeling demoralised. Maybe some people are going to quit. I don't know. So then, you know, maybe by default, certain group or groups might emerge as being more central. But that needs to be fixed. And while we're on the subject... you know, we've all been for years talking about how it's so great to live in this this society where we have all these different opinions. You know, it's so great. And when you go into X, you know, that's the sentiment you hear. And you go onto spaces on X or discussion groups, or even when I'm being interviewed on X spaces, you have all these different opinions coming in, and people think that's a great thing. It's so great, free speech and so on. Yeah, but in terms of getting organised, that's terrible. It's terrible to have all these different opinions, people going in different directions, because you don't have that efficiency, you don't have that unity, you don't have that strength in numbers, because people are all going in their different directions. And that's part of the, I suppose, getting into the idea of freedom of speech, personal choice, personal opinions, personalities, and all this crack, all this stuff. Because, you know, so you look at say the ideology of liberalism, which is about people's rights and so on and not being encroached upon. There's a lot of good things in the liberal ideology as well. But obviously to take that to the extreme, or if it's a bit too much like that and everybody's all about themselves and being an individual and being expressive, you know, how are they going to unite as a group? Because you can't. That's why I would call myself a nationalist over a libertarian, because I think nationalist is more efficient, because you're saying as a nationalist you're opposed to globalism. So you're the opposite. Internationalism is nationalism, and obviously the libertarian philosophy of being an individual and so on is great, but we can't fight this thing as individuals, and it's going to come for you and wipe you out, and you're going to lose your rights anyway. With that mindset, if you're just an individual, you have to form together as a group. So what's the best ideology for that? Clearly nationalism is a better approach, I think, in terms of putting the message out there. And that would contain liberal principles as well. The idea of having, have liberal principles enshrined in nationalism. The way I see it, it's automatic. If you have a bunch of patriots, nationalistic types involved in a government, you know, personalities like I mentioned, people like your Derek Bly's and so on, who are patriots and have the interests of the country at heart, who just want a normal, healthy Ireland and so on. If you got people like that at the helm, they would automatically respect the rights of people within the society. You know what I'm saying? Like, liberal values are contained within a healthy patriotic system or patriotic government. So we don't have to worry about that. You know what I mean? That's why I would put more emphasis on the idea of nationalism as being the solution in that respect. But then again, like I was saying, the interpretations of nationalism are what causes the issue. And Justin Barrett actually mentioned it on the space. It was about 6 months ago. I think he mentioned something about, yeah, there is a certain amount of agreement between these groups, but then they have differences on how to deal with things, even on the issue of the ethno-nationalist stuff. Like I said, that all needs to be kind of ironed out. Yeah, that's a good point, Kieran. You know, and that's actually, you reminded me to mention something there before I kind of expand on your point. I've been in this game a long time now, right? I've been interested in this for over 20 years, we'll say, interested in bigger picture issues. And look, we all have egos, and I have an ego. We all have an ego. And part of your duty as a person in this world is to get a hold of your own ego. And I'm no different, right? And I'm willing to put aside my personal preferences to do what's best for the group, right? What's the most efficient stance or system that's most likely to produce results? I'm all for that, even if it goes against what I previously thought was the best idea. Tying into what you were saying, you know, if people are getting too emotional or too ego-based and they're not rationalizing things out, you know, I kind of presume that's what you're getting at. Yeah, that's not going to produce results, is it? Because, you know, people are just putting what they're personally comfortable with above what's best for the group. I mean, you know, I often say this fight we're in against globalism is a big intelligence test. That's what it is. Now, I'm not fucking talking about just IQ or whether or not you're in Mensa. You know, that's part of intelligence. What I really mean is consciousness, right? Which is the best barometer, the best term to use here, consciousness. When I say consciousness, I don't mean in a wishy-washy spiritual new age movement way. When I say conscious, I mean how switched on somebody is, how really intelligent they are. Someone can be an academically intelligent person or have high IQ and still be a fucking moron and not understand that we're fighting against the globalist system here, you know. But the back to the consciousness thing, this globalist monster we're up against is a real test of consciousness within a people. So, you know, your ability to really be sharp and intelligent and to fight this, and that includes putting your own ego aside. And, you know, like you mentioned there, you alluded to there, Kieran, being more logical than emotional. You know, there's nothing wrong with emotions. Of course, you need your passion and your love and all these other things. But when it comes to problem solving specifically, which is what I'm talking about here, you need to be logical, you know, and that's part of the problem is people having this right stance. And another problem tied into that, which relates to the whole, the X spaces and public discourse and so on, is that we're not all equal. Not everybody's equal. I don't know if a lot of people have grasped that. Again, it's part of one of the issues with general discourse and free. I'm not against free speech, but I just mean when people start repeating that like parrots, people come in with different opinions, and all of a sudden all opinions are treated equally. But that's not the way reality works, and that's not the way people work. We should have the best minds who are good at solving problems come to the fore. What we'll do is we'll pick the best ideas, try them out, and not dilly-dally about it with stuff like this. Have the best minds come together, present solutions, pick the best ones, and hopefully everyone follows that. But this idea of everyone thinking that their opinions are all equal comes from Marxism, because Marxism is against hierarchies and that we should all be equal. That's not the way reality works. We have to have the sharpest ideas come to the fore. A bit of genius there, yeah. So that's what I think is going to be the way out of this, just sorting out this efficiency problem. I mean, it's only, we're still kind of dealing with the aftermath of the election and so on. And I don't think it's not all about politics, but I mean, if you're going to go for the political solution, you have to streamline things and make them efficient. Otherwise, it's not going to produce results. So I hope we'll see how people respond to that, and we'll see whether or not soon I might do another video as well to see if I'm optimistic about this. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how the response is. And my kind of work, for those who don't know, is specifically focuses on the major problem across the West, which is Marxism and Marxist indoctrination, because it turns people into traitors. So there's two dynamics at play here. There's the brainwashed section of the population who are dragging us towards dystopia. There's the more nationalistic anti-globalist camp, which needs to get itself organized. So that's a problem that needs to be fixed anyway, like I was saying. But that other problem hasn't gone away either. And there's a lot of people in the middle who are biased towards Marxism. It seems to be the default ideology. So, I'm not going in a new direction. This is just another problem we have to deal with as well, the one I was describing. But my opinion, or my stance, that Marxism is still the major problem, hasn't changed. And as I was saying at the start of the stream, I hope people will engage with that tweet. I'll put that up there again, actually, about watching that presentation, because I appreciate not everyone's going to want to read a book because people are busy and life and all that crack. But nobody is too busy to watch a 55-minute video. You don't have to watch it all in one day, right? But if you want to know how to oppose this globalist New World Order system, and you want your country to be free, you have to understand Marxism. Nice one. Thanks for that, Trish. Appreciate it. Yeah, maybe I'll put out more, mention that to people about Christmas, get some books for Christmas, Yeah, it'll definitely keep you busy. It's over 600 pages. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the book, people actually asked me about this. Like, it was going to be a documentary originally, but when I start putting papers, this is 2018, when I start writing the book, when I start putting ideas down on paper, it was going to be a documentary, but I had so much information on the subject, and the documents start getting longer and longer. Then it just kind of turned into a book. So I wasn't planning on doing a book. That's just kind of what happened. And so sometimes I thought, Jesus, who's going to read a 600-page book nowadays? But the thing is as well, one of the benefits of reading a book is that you're forced to engage with it, if you're watching videos, you can get distracted, or if you're listening to a podcast, you can get distracted and so on. But a book forces you to pay attention and absorb the damn information. So that's a good thing about a book, for sure. That's one of the big advantages of reading a book. And I consider it actually a training course for patriots. That's what it is. It's not there to replace, everything people have been doing. Like talking about culture, speaking out, being nationalistic, My approach, my work isn't to replace that. It's an add-on. It's an upgrade for Patriots. That's what it is. It's training course for Patriots. And the fact that it's over 600 pages mean it's going to take a few weeks for the average person to get through at least. And that's okay. It's an investment, particularly for parents. Because in today's world, parents have to, in addition to everything else they have to do, they have to keep their kids insulated from Marxist brainwashing. In addition to keeping your kids fed, clothed and watered, you need to keep them away from all sorts of nutcases in society, whether it's teachers or social care workers, sports coaches, your neighbour, whatever. Anyone around you could be brainwashed with Marxism. You have to keep your kids away from it. Now, how my book helps parents is that it trains you to know who's brainwashed and who isn't, and to what degree. You'll know how they talk, how they act, what their beliefs are, and you'll say, that nut job there is brainwashed. I'm not letting them anywhere near my kids. And you can actually do yourself a favour as well and just keep an eye on them, particularly if you've got any dangerous right-wing beliefs. Yeah, nice one, yeah. The presentation is definitely a good start, it seems to be going down really well. The full version is about an hour and 40 minutes longer than that, but that was including the Q&A, which is a bit ropey. I had some good questions from the students, but there's a few arseholes as well. But the presentation itself is a bit more compact at 55 minutes, so I definitely recommend that. Yeah, that's gas. Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of start writing a long time ago. Actually, I talked about this before. I start writing like a long time ago when I was doing stand-up. That's where I learned to write, actually, because when you're doing stand-up comedy, if you've got a few hundred people on looking at you perform on stage, your writing has to be sharp. Not all stand-ups were like me, but because I came from a drama background, that's where I learned to write. But I think that's what you're getting at there. But 600 pages, yeah. Well, when I sent it to the publisher, I didn't think they'd say yes. I sent them the draft, and I thought they were going to tell me to cut a few hundred pages off it, but they said yes the way it was. So so I said okay. I just decided to leave it as is, and I did. Everything that's important is in the book. There's a few things that aren't in it, which are become popular recently, like talking about DEI or ESG. Someone doesn't know what they are, ask me in the comments, but these are like things that come from the ideology, and they weren't really, I think they're kind of mentioned in the book, but I spent the last a year and a half just editing, really, to be honest. But those things have become more noticeable and popular now. So part of me thinks, shit, they weren't in the book, they should have been in it. But really, there's plenty of videos out there online about that shit anyway. Marxism is too big to fit the whole thing into one book anyway. Like, my book is designed to take someone from who's novice up to mastery, in a so many pages. But the story is so big, you couldn't fit the whole ideology and everything to do within one book. There's the economic side of it, the historical side of it, the psychological side of it, the political side of it. You could write 10 books about the economic impact on its own. So my book just has certain bits from those different areas to give someone a nice overview. But that's part of the problem as well. How are we supposed to fix this issue? I mean, if I'm right, and I am right, that this is the biggest problem we ever faced, and to understand it, it's important that the people understand it, but to understand it, everybody needs to read 10 books or something. You're wasting your time. You might as well forget about it, because not everyone's going to do that. You can't trying to make it as compact and simple as possible is what I've tried to do, to make it as palatable and universal for people as possible, because people just don't have the time nowadays to study into this. But unfortunately, we have no choice. We have no choice but to learn this. Otherwise, we're all going to sink. And going back to what I was saying earlier, in terms of like the groups, in society. I mentioned right at the start, you've got, let's go back to X here. Let's go back to Mainstream here 1 second. So remember I said at the right at the start, you've got like 3 groups in society. People are brainwashed to go along with globalism. People in the middle who are kind of like not quite involved. People on the anti-globalist / nationalist patriotic side. Logically speaking, we need to make that group bigger, don't we? We need to make this group here, full of people who are brainwashed to go along with globalism, we need to make that smaller. So my point is, I've already done the math on this. I've already created the solution for this. People just need to learn about Marxism. Because when you learn about Marxism, you make it socially unacceptable for people to be there. Everybody knows it's a mental illness and it's a form of treason. So you make that group smaller while you make it easier for people to join the nationalist group and make that bigger. People in the middle will start to go towards the more nationalistic side. This is one of the benefits of suppressing Marxism and treating it like a mental illness. Because remember this, you should all know this. Think of this over the years. These nutjobs calling everyone far right, Nazi and fascist, right? That creates a lot of social pressure, intimidation, that stops people from moving from the middle group over towards the nationalistic group. It's a form of emotional blackmail or intimidation that the Marxist camp have been using for over 100 years, you know? And by attacking Marxism and suppressing that across society and making it seem like a mental illness, which it is, you make it easier for people to go towards nationalism and make that the more default stance, you know. So that's why, like, it sounds cocky, but I already came up with the solution 6 years ago. The answer is there for people when I start putting the book together. It's just that unfortunately with Marxism, people don't understand how important it is till they start looking into it. So how on earth can I convince people that they should read the book or watch the presentation and emphasize the importance of it before they've actually gone and done it? It's a bit of a paradox, but that's part of the hell I live every day. If people would just get stuck in and learn the damn subject, they would realize pretty fast that this is the answer we've been looking for, and this will get us out of this mess. And one kind of last point on that, people have said to me, trying to change the culture and moving it back towards Marxism, is that not going to take decades or years? Don't we have the time for that? Well, my response to that is we have to start anyway, number one. But number two, it's not just about changing the culture slowly. It's not going to take that long anyway. It's not just about that. There's also short-term benefits, not just long-term benefits to being anti-Marxist and creating the anti-Marxist environment. The short-term benefits is that you're making a clear line in the sand between who's brainwashed and who isn't, and who's a traitor and who isn't. Because another point, and sorry to be a little bit dark here, often when you're dealing with this Marxist camp, it breaks down into a struggle, an actual fight. That's not my opinion. That's looking at the history. It often breaks down into a struggle. Now, how are you supposed to win that struggle if you don't know who's against you and who's for you, and who's against your country and who's for your country? So that's why, again, I recommend if people understand Marxism, they understand who's brainwashed to go against their own nation's interest and to what degree. It also teaches people about Marxist tactics, which they use to divide their opposition and so on. So, this is really the heart of it, and I can't really say much more than that, to be honest. Oh, yeah, totally. And I mean, there's no excuse as well today, Trish. It's like a quarter of a way through the 21st century, right? So you look at, in 1917 was the Bolshevik takeover of Russia. There's 2 revolutionary events, and the Bolsheviks ended up in charge in the so-called October Revolution. It was actually November in our calendar. And that marked a new phase in Marxism. And interestingly, a lot of the so-called New World Order groups were formed after that year. I could list those in a minute, I suppose. But my point is that even back then, this movement was an internationalist, conspiratorial, organized, subversive movement that was infecting country after country And so it's over 100 years old and people still can't see it, despite everything that it's done, despite the death toll, despite the fact that, look at what trans ideology is doing to the young, sterilizing people, you know, to the point where they can't reproduce. Look at what feminism has done to Western countries, driven the birth rates down. Feminism is Marxism too. You know, look at what BLM did in the States. Look at all the hate crime and hate speech bill and all this crack. Look at open borders. You know, look at all the anti-white hatred coming from these immigrants. Have you ever seen anything like it? Imagine me going to Japan and attacking Japanese people when they've just welcomed me in as their guest. This is psychosis, and this comes from Marxism. It all comes from Marxism. And despite all that, people still can't even see this damn thing. It drives me mental that people aren't talking about it. They can't even see it. Never mind understand it, despite everything that's happened. So, you know, the clock is ticking here, and I urge people to get on board with this before it's too late. I'm going to leave it there, folks, as this is a really uncomfortable chair, and it's pretty much can't feel my body now at this stage. I just thought I'd riff about a few things. I didn't think I was going to go on this long. But if anyone wants to send me any, like, you know, DMs on X or whatever, or stuff, data, or your... Actually, yeah, I'd urge people to watch the presentation and let me know what you think. But make sure you share that around, right? It's up over 30,000 views. I don't know if people are watching the whole thing, but that's pretty good. Like, you know, X is great for that. So we should use the hell out of X while we can and get as many eyes on that as we can. So it's just 55 minutes. It could change your life. It could change your perspective on things. You don't have to watch it all in the one sitting, but I would recommend it. And send it to everybody. And for parents, in terms of what having the younger people watch, there's a little bit of bad language, tiny little bit here and there, but nothing that serious. But don't shield them too much. But yeah, thanks for that. Interested, yeah, cheers. But yeah, I'll probably do another one soon. This is kind of like just a makeshift setting. You can see, like, I've got all shit in the background. This is my place in Spain here. I usually have a studio with a big backdrop and so on, with lights and all this, you know, the whole 9 yards, but this is just a temporary setup at the moment. Nice one, Trish. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's cool. Nice one. Does the job. But yeah, so anyone drop me a message or whatever, folks. Thanks for watching. Appreciate the comments and all that. You know, that's actually the most comments I've ever seen on a stream that I've done myself. So I've only done like about 4 streams ever on YouTube, but never bothered to promote them. I was really just testing equipment tonight, so it's nice to see a few comments anyway. And hope everyone's feeling optimistic and yeah. Yeah, it's the winter here for sure. But nice one. So anyway, thanks, folks. I will talk to you soon. Keep the faith and all that, and I'll talk to you in the next stream.